In this video, we're going to learn how to solve two-step equations. Let's look at our first example here. We have 1/3 x plus 3 equals 4/6 x plus 9. The first decision you have to make is where do you want to keep your variables and what side of the equal sign do you want to keep your numbers. In this particular problem, I'm going to choose to keep my variables on the right-hand side, and I'm going to keep my numbers on the left-hand side. And once you make that decision, you can go ahead and move whatever doesn't belong to the other side of the equal sign. And to do that, we usually do the opposite operation. So when I look at the right-hand side and I see that a 9 is being added to 4/6x, then what I want to do to move it to the other side so it's with the numbers, I want to subtract it. Now once I do that, that's going to give me a 0 and get rid of that 9 on my right-hand side and only leave my variable 4/6x. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side in order to keep both sides equal. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is simplify here, and I'm going to write the 1/3 x because I haven't really done anything with that, and simplify. 3 minus 9 is going to give me a -6, and that's going to be equal to 4/6x. Now what I want to do is I want to move this 1/3 x to the other side. Do the opposite again. Now this is a source of confusion for some kids because when they see 1/3 x, what they see is 1/3 being multiplied by x, and that is correct, and we're going to get to deal with that in a minute. But in order to move it to the other side, what you need to realize is that this is actually being added to this left-hand side. So this is a plus or positive 1/3 x minus 6, and so that's why we choose to subtract. When we do that, we're going to go ahead and have nothing here because positive 1/3 x minus 1/3 x is 0, and that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to leave just a -6 here by itself, and then we have our fractions. Now normally you would just simplify when you move your fractions around, but the reason I didn't do that is because what you may have noticed is that these have a totally different denominator, and so when we have a different denominator, I can't just add or subtract. I have to find a common denominator. Between 6 and 3, I know that my common denominator is going to be a 6. So in order to get from a 3 to a 6, I have to multiply this 3 by 2. And because I did that in my denominator, I have to do the same in my numerator in order to keep this fraction equivalent. So ultimately, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this 1/3 x with 2/6. The only thing I did was just find an equivalent fraction so that I am now able to subtract my numerators. They both have the same denominator now, so I can just simply subtract 4 minus 2, and that gives me 2/6x. When we are solving an equation, we want to ultimately know what the value of x is that will make the original equation true. So that is what we're looking for. We're not looking for the value of 2/6x or 5x or 6x or whatever the coefficient that's attached to the x by multiplication here is. So we're not looking for that. So I need to go ahead and get rid of this 2/6. And the only way to do that, and this is where your knowledge about what is actually happening comes in handy. We know that this is the same as 2/6 times x. And so once you realize that, then you know that what you have to do to detach these two from being together is to actually divide each side by 2/6. You know that when we divide a fraction, we are actually multiplying by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal in this case would be switching the 6 from the denominator to the numerator and switching the 2 from the numerator to the denominator. So I'm actually going to multiply by 6/2. When I do that, basically what I'm doing is 6 times 2 over 6 times 2. And if I were to divide these, then I would have a 1. So what I have left on the right-hand side here is 1x. We usually do not write the 1, so I'm just going to keep it as x. And what I have on the other side is I have a -6 that's being multiplied by 6/2. So all you have to do there is do the math. 6 times -6 is -36 divided by 2, x is going to be equal to negative 18. But one of the most important things that we have to do when we find an answer is plug it back into your original equation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. My original equation again was 1/3 x plus 3 equals 4/6x plus 9. What I'm going to do is anytime I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a negative 18. So instead of the x here that's being multiplied, I'm going to replace that by a negative 18. And then same thing on the other side. I'm going to replace that by a negative 18. And then I'm just going to go ahead and simplify. Negative 18 thirds here plus 3. And then negative 18 times 4 over 6 plus 9. Now negative 18 over 3 is going to give me a negative 6 plus 3. That's going to give me a negative 3 on that side. But a simplification on this side is a little bit more challenging, but I know that negative 18 divided by 6 is going to give me a negative 3, and then negative 3 times 4 is going to give me a negative 12 plus 9, and when I simplify that, I'm going to get a negative 3. So if both sides are actually equal, then that means that yes, this answer is the correct answer for your equation because it makes it true. Now go ahead and try the second problem. 1/4 x plus 2 equals 5/4 x plus 10. Go ahead and pause the video and give it a try.